Oh, hello YouTube. Today on the Naughty Librarian, we are here to review and recap Merrick by Anne Rice. This is the next book in the Vampire Chronicles series. I was excited to get back to it after my sojourn in the Mayfair Witches trilogy. But I wanted to do the trilogy first before I got back into Vampire Chronicles because Merrick is a Mayfair, so I wanted to have the foundation set, basically. And you know what? I think this might be my shortest Anne Rice book outside of like Interview of the Vampire, the very first book of the series, because this one was breezy to get through. It was not very long at all. So yeah, let's just get into what actually happened in Merrick. The book starts off with David Talbot, our favorite Talamasca agent turned new body having vampire. Him, you know? And he is meeting up with one of his old students from the Talamasca to ask for a favor. And this old student is Merrick Mayfair. Now, Merrick is from a different branch of the Mayfairs, one we don't really hear about. They link all the way back to Julian and one of his many lovers, and like it's branched off from there. They still take the Mayfair name, but like Julian didn't marry any of them, so I'm not really sure how they got the Mayfair name, but they're Mayfairs. But here in the present, Merrick is a medium, and she has the ability to speak to and call forth spirits from the dead. And David wants her to use her powers to call Claudia back from the dead because Louis has been whining about Claudia a lot recently, and he's been wanting to speak to her ghost for the longest time after he found out that Jesse had seen Claudia's spirit all the way back in Queen of the Damned. Like, he has been needing to talk to Claudia. We all know Louis has enormous capacity for whining. So David's like, all right, I'll ask Merrick to do this. So David and Merrick have about like 20 years of history between them. And I'm just going to give like a trigger warning here for gross sex stuff because David keeps reminiscing a lot about when he first met Merrick, when she, mind you, she was like 14, and like how great her 14-year-old boobs were. And not just like in passing, like he brings it up like at least 5 times in the same chapter. Like he is just like really inappropriate thoughts toward like underage boobs and a child. Like, I don't know what it is about Anne Rice, but she sexualizes children in her books a lot. And it's really uncomfortable. Yikes. So now that that's been addressed, so like I was saying, there's about 20 years of history between Merrick and David. So David met Merrick, she was around 14 years old, and she had just become an orphan. So David and his old bestie, Aaron, oh my gosh, we get a little cameo from Aaron in this. They go take her into the care of the Talamasca. Mind you, I love Aaron. Aaron's a class act. Never once thought about her boobs. Like, he's just like, she's a child and I'm taking care of her. Aaron is great. David, I'm very disappointed in right now. But like I was saying, they take her to the care of the Talamasca. It's kind of like Charles Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters at this point. They're like, oh, you have magical abilities? Come hang out with us. So like I was saying, you know, Merrick has just been officially orphaned. Her great-grandmother, Great Nanan, had just died. Her mother is named Cold Sandra. She's already dead. And her sister, Honey in the Sunshine, also dead. They have very interesting names. So her whole family's dead. She's an orphan, and David and Aaron kind of adopt her. So they're like kind of adoptive dads in a way, and which makes it worse for David, but greater for Aaron. As David is constantly struggling with his attraction toward Merrick. Ew. And to David, why? Why did we need David to be a creep? I'm so disappointed in this. He was such a likable character. But besides that, you know, Merrick does grow up into a young woman. She grows up and she learns all of like this magical lore and languages and history and, you know, all the stuff any good Talamasca agent would learn. And then when she's 18, she gets officially like inducted as an officiant for the Talamasca. So she's kind of grown up in the Talamasca and now she's part of the Talamasca. But as time goes on, she starts getting like a bit moody and distant, and she wants less to do with the Talamasca. And eventually she moves out of the New Orleans headquarters and she moves back into her grandmother's house, which she technically owns. And like, long story short here, she's basically just being being haunted by like this old uncle of hers who was like a voodoo practitioner, and he wants her to go back to South America and go hunting for this magical artifact. So yeah, this takes a turn towards like Indiana Jones for a hot minute, because like apparently when Merrick was like a little girl, like 10, her and her mother and her sister and her stepfather Matthew all went on this expedition to South America because Matthew was looking for this magical artifact. And they never ended up finding it. Like they got like to the cave, but they never got to the treasure because Matthew, he ended up getting really, really sick with like this rare disease and he dies. So they don't know what to do. So her mother and sister and Merrick all go back to the States. And that was it. They just never went back to South America. And not long after they get back to the States in particular, like Cold Sandra and Honey in the Sunshine just abandon Merrick. They run off together. They're like gonna go do stuff, but they leave Merrick behind because she's 10. Like, what are they gonna do with her? Like, Honey is like 16. She's old enough, but apparently right after they abandoned Merrick, they were like killed by this guy instantly. So like everybody's dead. That all being said, in the present, she's still being haunted by this really old great uncle of hers she only met when she was a very little girl. And he's haunting her, telling her she needs to go back to South America and recover this magical artifact. So David, he goes to see her and he's like, hey, what's up? Like, things are off with you. And she's like, listen, I'm being haunted as all hell. Like, I need to go to South America. You need to come with me because you did like your fellowship in South America. You know some shit. David doesn't really want to do this because, mind you, he is an old man at this point. He's like 70, so he doesn't really want to go traipsing through the jungle. Reluctantly, he agrees to do it because Merrick's gonna go either way. He might as well go with to like help her. So that's what they do. They go to South America, and when they arrive, they meet up with like the Talamasca mercenaries chapter, because apparently they just have chapters of mercenaries around to like protect like their archaeologists, which I was like, what? So they meet up with their mercenaries and they go off into the jungle to start looking for this cave which has the treasure in it. And then one night on this journey, Merrick and David perhaps have a little bit too much to drink, and one thing leads to another. And they end up having sex. Mind you, like I said, David is like 70 at this point and Merrick is about 24. So like, at least both of them are adults at this point, but like, still, yikes. It's still not a great situation, but at least like Merrick is into it. Merrick wanted this to happen, so like I can move past it for now. So now that the uncomfortable sex is done, we're about to officially get all Indiana Jones up in this bitch. So David and Merrick, they go off into the jungle and they find like this lost temple, this huge temple, and it's like all old, and David's like, oh my gosh, I want to explore this. I need to be a scientist and a scholar right now. Like, he is a mad boner for this temple. Merrick's like, later, we gotta go through the temple to get to the cave to get the treasure. So David's like, ugh, fine. So they go through the temple and they get to like this cave, except it's not really a cave so much as it's a tomb. So now we're getting into Tomb Raider territory. So within this tomb, there's this jade mask, like a whole face mask made of jade. And when a person wears it, it allows them to see spirits and hear spirits as if they were corporeal beings. Basically, it just like amplifies a medium's ability. But mind you, this culture of people isn't just gonna leave a magical mask laying in a tomb. Like, they did put some safeguards in place. Like, they put all of these like protective and vengeful spirits in the cave that like fuck with you. And they have to resist the spirits, and then they steal the mask and they gotta run the heck out of there because the spirits are not happy with them. So they like run away. And David is really bummed out about this. He's like, but like all the stuff I need to learn. So he just grabs handfuls of stuff and he's just like, okay, let's go. And like they run away and say, I'll study this later. And they make it out. They make it out of the tomb. They make it out of the temple. Good for them. They set up camp for the night, and then David starts getting very sick. Like, sick like her old stepfather Matthew got, like incredibly ill. It's very similar. However, in this instance, Merrick is with him all the time, and Merrick is now a grown woman who has had years honing her, you know, spirit abilities, and she's there to like keep anchoring his spirit to his body so he can't die, essentially. So she's keeping him alive. So since we're here in the future, we already know David does recover from this. He survives, he lives. And they go back to the States, and Merrick has her mask, but she is just fundamentally shook from the whole experience. Because I feel like now that she has this mask, her powers have amped up, and she's like constantly feels her older sister, Honey in the Sunshine, around her all the time. The problem is, in her spirit life and in her regular life, Honey was a stone cold bitch. Like, she was just awful to be around. And now she's just like a particularly spiteful spirit constantly hovering around Merrick. Like, it's a nightmare. And Merrick, she's like, you know what? I need some space from all of this. Like, I need to be away. I need to like clear my head. I got it. I'm gonna go to Egypt to go excavate some tombs over there. And it's like, Merrick, this is what got you into this pickle in the first place. So I don't know why she thinks like, oh no, I am fundamentally shook from like excavating this one tomb. I'm gonna go do more tombs. It's not the best decision-making process, but I guess it works because she goes off to Egypt. That's kind of like the last time she and David really saw each other a bunch before the events of Tale of the Body Thief. When Aaron, you know, got a new body, young man body. But anyways, back to the present right now, where David and Merrick are meeting for the first time after, you know, he's in his new body and also a vampire. So David asked her the whole Claudia situation, and she's like, of course, I'll help you. You're David. I'm like, why would I not help you? And then things start getting like flirty between them, and by flirty I mean gropey. Like, wow, they just start like hardcore making out. However, you know, David is a vampire now, and vampires don't really have sex. Like, they're capable of it, but it has no appeal for them, basically. So, but I mean, he's still into the groping parts. So he takes her back to a hotel, and he ends up leaving her at the hotel because he doesn't want to get like carried away in this situation and accidentally hurt and or eat her. So he's like, all right, I'm gonna back off for now. So David, he's walking back to the apartment he shares with Louis and Lestat, and he's like haunted by all these visions along the way. He keeps seeing like Merrick everywhere he turns. There's another version of Merrick, and sometimes he sees like Great Nan, her old grandmother, and he's like, what the fuck? So he goes back to the hotel, and he's like, Merrick, what's going on here? Mind you, Merrick is now passed out drunk. He can't wake her up. She's so drunk. So he's like, ugh. And he's looking around the hotel room, and like he finds her like altar where she's doing her voodoo spells and rituals. And he sees like this handkerchief that he wiped his blood sweat on in the altar, amongst other things. So he's like, goddamn Merrick, you cast a spell on me? That's a dick move. Like, he's a little annoyed by this. So he takes his blood back because that's like a violation. I mean, David's really one to talk at this point, but still. David, he can't even really confront Merrick about it because she's passed out drunk. He's like, whatever, I'm just gonna go back. I'm gonna go back home. I can't do anything about this now, but I feel like I've stopped the spells. Maybe. But like, it doesn't really work. Like, he took back his like blood, but like, this is a doozy of a spell she cast. So he keeps getting plagued with visions, and he starts hearing this sonata by like Mozart and like little birds singing, which is very similar to what Jessie was hearing when she first encountered Claudia's ghost back in Queen of the Damned. So he's like, oh my gosh, Claudia, she's close. And he's like freaking out. And Louis comes back to the apartment. He sees David. He's like, David, are you okay? Like, how many fingers am I holding up? Like, he's like, what's going on? David's really out of it. So David's like, oh, okay. Like, he has something to focus on outside of all this trippy stuff. So he starts focusing on Louis, and he's like, Louis, I went and saw Merrick, and she agreed she's gonna help like pull Claudia's spirit over so you can talk to her. And Louis is very still conflicted about this idea. Because on the one hand, he like desperately wants to see her again because, you know, what if her soul is lost and it's wandering around, and maybe he can help her like find peace. Like he's really worried about her in general, probably due to a lot of his own guilt. And then on the other hand, Louis is also really horrified that maybe Claudia doesn't want peace at all. Like maybe she's really vengeful and hateful. He worries. He doesn't know how this is gonna go, but he knows it's something he needs to do. And Louis, in true Louis fashion, is whining and moping and having just self-pity parties all the time. He's on a big pity party kick right now. It's very obvious from the way Louis is talking about Claudia and like wanting to rescue her spirit that he's doing all this because, you know, he wants to like finish his unresolved business with her so he can unalive himself. Like this is taking it up to another level of Louis whining. Like now we're getting like suicidal ideation and we're like, yeah, this is a problem. On top of things, like David is also really, really concerned about Merrick and potentially putting her in danger by doing this ritual because, you know, he's been reminiscing about his history with her and he's starting to like fall back in love with her again, probably because of all the gropes. So at this point, like a lot has happened here in the book. I think we're at least halfway through. You might be wondering, hey, where's Lestat at this point? So Merrick takes place several years after the events of Memnoch the Devil, where like Lestat lost his mind. He's never really recovered since that, so he spends all of his time just like laying on the floor of a chapel and just, you know, staring off into space and working through his own existential crisis. So he's not really around. He's off, like, he's trying to figure shit out and it's taken him years. So most of the time he's just like isolated and staring at the walls. So fun stuff. That's where Lestat's been this whole time. But in the meantime here, Merrick, she goes back to the Talamasca headquarters in London so she can retrieve like all of Claudia's belongings that the Talamasca has, and it'll help her like call forth her spirit if she has these items. So it takes her about a week to go to London and back, and she sends a note to David when she's back in New Orleans. So David and Louis, they go over to her house to meet up with her to get this show on the road here. And like Louis, he even gets all dressed up for the occasion. Like he cleans up like well, and like Merrick takes notice of this. She's like, damn, Louis, I like how you fit those pants. Like she's like way into him, and like Louis is immediately like way into Merrick. Like it's like all of a sudden like insta lust. They're just like super into each other. And Dave is there and he's like, what the fuck is this? Like he's very grumbly and jealous about it. He's like, I didn't bring him here for you guys to make moon eyes at each other. What's happening? Like David's very upset. However, they don't have time to make moon eyes at each other for long because they have to get down to business. So Merrick, she starts preparing like the ritual and she tells Louis like, all right, I'm gonna call Claudia. But the thing about spirits is like, this isn't an exact science here, okay? Like I'm gonna call for Claudia, but it might not be Claudia that answers. You gotta believe me when I tell you what's what. And before we start, like there's some shit you should probably know. So she gives Louis Claudia's journal and she's like, you should read a couple of these passages before we start, just so you're prepared. And like, whoo boy, Claudia's journal gets real about some stuff. Like, you know, basically it talks about like how she despised Louis and Lestat, even though she kind of still loved Louis in her own way. We already knew that. We know Claudia's capable of murder. And the only reason why she didn't kill Louis in the first place is because she found him more malleable to what she wanted to do. And Lestat too fucking stubborn, so he needed to die. And basically she just kept Louis alive so she could use him for her own goals. Like it wasn't out of like love, I want to be with Louis. It was just like, you're an adult and I'm a child, I need you for things, and like you're easier to control. That was the only reason why she didn't kill him. And I really kind of like this aspect of the book because we've only ever seen Claudia through the eyes of another person. We never really have seen Claudia in her own words in any of the books yet. You know, we've seen like Louis's version of Claudia where she's like this tragic figure. And then we see like Lestat's version of Claudia where she's just like a vicious little creature. So we never really see Claudia for who she is. And this book is like, yikes! Like, so it's kind of interesting seeing Claudia from an impartial perspective. We're seeing her own words and how like devious she was. Regardless of how devious she is, Louis still wants to go on with the session. He doesn't care. He's like, fine, like whatever. I still want to talk to Claudia. So Merrick's like, all right, let's do this. So she starts setting up for her big voodoo ritual, and she like dons the jade spirit mask. She still has it after all these years. And everything is like real spooky. Like there's like a human skull, there's rum, some Claudia's things, other like, you know, enticements to the spirits, like there's honey, and like there's a statue of Saint Peter, which, you know, like I'm not an expert in voodoo, but I know a lot of like the Catholic saints were stand-ins for the voodoo spirits. So Saint Peter was often a stand-in for like Papa Legba. So she has all this ready to go, everything set up. And the only last thing she really needs is some blood to help entice the spirits. So she's like, Louis, batter up. I'm going to use your vampire blood because what's best to call another vampire? Vampire blood. So she cuts Louis, so he's spilling blood. She starts calling Claudia to her. And, you know, Claudia's spirit does come, and it goes very poorly. So Claudia shows up, and like Louis like, Claudia, have you found peace? And she's like, bitch, fuck you. No, I haven't found peace. I'm wandering the fuck around and I don't really remember most of anything all the time. And she's like so angry at Louis for the audacity of doing this to her. She's like, really? You are so fucking selfish in your vampire life to make me into a vampire for your own happiness, for your own selfish reasons, not because it's what's best for me. And now that I'm dead, you're still making me come to you for your own fucking selfish reasons? God damn it, Louis, you are the worst. Like, she's so upset with him. He's like, what, you wanted me to come here so you could have this big scene of forgiveness? Well, fuck you, that's not gonna happen. And Louis like, I'm sorry, I'm willing to join you in death. Like, I'll join you. And she's like, oh my gosh, go fuck yourself, Louis. Like, what part of this makes you think I want to hang out with you again? She's like, fine, kill yourself if you want, but like, I'm not waiting around for you to hang out. Like, what is wrong with you? You know what? Fuck this. And so she like her spirit is corporeal enough now that it grabs the knife and like it stabs Louis in the heart before it fades away. Like, this was vengeful. I really don't think it was possible for this to go any worse than it did. Like, she's like, fuck you, Louis. I hate you. I don't care if you kill yourself because I'm not waiting around for you. And then I'm going to stab you. Like, wow. This went badly. So on that note, Louis is pretty devastated. And he just runs off into the night to brood because, you know, he's having a doozy of a night. And Derek, he like takes Merrick back into the house because she's like drained. This took a lot out of her. So he's helping her recover. And she's like, David. Claudia, her spirit was lying about a lot of stuff because most spirits are pretty nasty and they prey on people's worst fears when they're called and forced to come to you. Like, if they come to you on their own, usually they have good intentions. If you're forcing them here, they're gonna fuck with you. Like, basically, Claudia's spirit pulled on Louis's guilt and his own feeling that he's not worthy of Claudia's love to like really make him feel like garbage on purpose. Like, that was her goal. However, there's still like a few truths sprinkled into her narrative of things because, you know, the best lies are sprinkled with truth. So like, she really did hate his guts, basically, but like, this was a bit over the top. So Merrick, she goes to sleep, she's gonna rest, and David, he goes after Louis to check on him. But Louis needs a few days of space to like come to terms with everything, because this was a whole lot. So David's like, okay, fine, I'll give you some space for for a few days. And then a few days go by and David's like, you know, I haven't heard from Louis at all. I am becoming a bit alarmed because I know his whole plan was to unalive himself. Like, this is a problem. And he doesn't know what to do. He can't find him, so he's like, okay. So he tries to go to Lestat. He's like, Lestat, hello? I know you're busy staring at the wall right now, but like Louis's in trouble. You know, Louis, your guy that you like a lot, like let's go help him. And like Lestat just won't wake up. So he's like, well, fuck, this was no help at all. So David, he goes back to the apartment. He's like, okay, I gotta make a plan to find Louis. And like, luckily, Louis's at the apartment. So he's like, oh wow, well that was easy enough. So they start talking and then things start going downhill from there because Louis is like, he's just basically confessing his undying love for Merrick. He's like, have you seen her? She's gorgeous and she's an angel. I'm in love with her. I need to be with Merrick. Like, he's just like on a full Merrick kick. Like, he's obsessed with her. And David's like, you know, I've seen this before. Like, dude, Merrick has cast a love spell on you. This isn't real. Like, she cast a spell on me the other day. Like, this is what she does. Like, bro, you need to take a step back. And like, Louis like, you don't understand. I have never felt like this before. And David's like, you felt like this all the time. Like, okay, fine, Louis. If this is really how you feel, let's go to Merrick together. I'll go with you just to be impartial. And Louis like, fine, take me to Merrick. I just want to be with Merrick. David and Louis, they go find Merrick. And as soon as they get to Merrick's house and they find her, like Merrick's like, Louis, oh my gosh, I'm in love with you. And like, all of your pain is my pain too. Let's go brood together, basically. And David is just like, what? Like, he's just flabbergasted by all of this. He's like, y'all just met. There's no way this is real. What is going on here? Something is afoot. But like, he has no proof of this. So Merrick and Louis aren't listening to him. And Merrick's like, you know, David, like, sorry, sucks to suck, but like, Louis and I want to be alone. So could you just like go away? Like, they both want him to leave. And like, David's like, okay, fucking fine, whatever. So David, he leaves and he's just like, you know what? I'm not dealing with this. I'm gonna go home, go to bed. I'm gonna go to bed early tonight. I'm not dealing with any of this. So, you know, he goes to bed for the day. He wakes up when it becomes night and like his spidey sense is tingling. He wakes up and he has this horrible sense of foreboding. He's like, oh no, something's wrong. Something's very wrong right now. So he like, you know, opens his coffin. He's gonna like go check on them, only to find Merrick waiting for him already. And she has been turned into a vampire. And Merrick is freaking the hell out right now. She doesn't know what to do. And it's not about what you think it's about. She's like, okay, David, you know what? You were right. Okay, I cast a love spell on Louis because I wanted to be able to control him to do what I want, which is to become a vampire. So I got what I wanted out of this. However, that's not the problem. That's not the problem for Merrick. Not that she like, you know, coerced him into doing things he didn't want to do, which is yikes. But the real problem here is that after Louis turned her into a vampire, he felt there was nothing more to live for, and he went out into the sun to unalive himself. So she's horrified. She doesn't know what to do because Louis was out in the sun all day, and now he is all extra crispy charcoal briquette. And she's like, I don't know what the fuck to do, David. I have an extra crispy vampire. What am I supposed to do? She doesn't know if he's dead or what, because if he was all the way dead, shouldn't he just be ash? And the thing is, yeah, if the sun really burned him to death, he should have just been ash. However, Louis was made by Lestat, and even a long time ago, when Lestat made Louis, his blood was already like super high octane. So like, he made Louis with really powerful vampire blood, and Louis has retained some of those abilities, even though Louis never spends any time trying to, you know, learn new vampire abilities. He kind of just denies that side of himself, but it doesn't change the fact he's super powerful. And like, Lestat even was out in the sun and it didn't kill him. So yeah, Louis inherited that trait. He was out in the sun all day and it didn't kill him, but oh boy, did it turn him into a charcoal briquette. So like, he's not happy right now, probably. Mind you, he's this petrified wood at this point, but like, he's not dead. And like, David doesn't really know what to do with this situation either. He's like, I don't deal with this on a regular basis. Why do you think I know what to do? And like, they're trying to figure it out. They're like, does Louis even want to be brought back? Like, at the very least, are David and Merrick strong enough and capable of doing it even? So they're in a pickle here. They don't know what to do. But luckily, they're kind of saved by the bell at this point, because guess who shows up finally? Lestat. After all these years of being catatonic, he finally decides to show up. And like, even Lestat's like, like, I could fix this, but like, the problem is, like, my blood was high octane before, and now, after everything, like in Memnon the Devil, allegedly he drank even Jesus's blood. So like, what's going on in Lestat? It's like unprecedented. He's like, I don't even know what's gonna happen if I try to bring him back, because like I was high octane before, but now it's like rocket fuel. Like, he's gonna be fundamentally changed if I do this. And so they're all kind of figuring out what the best thing to do is, and ultimately David's the one that convinces Lestat to at least try, because he's like, listen, if the roles were reversed and it was me who had spent all day in the sun, like, and I didn't die, like, I'd want someone to try to bring me back. So Lestat's like, all right, let's see what happens. So he starts like, cutting his arm, and he's pouring blood all over Louis's body and skin to help it heal faster. And like, David and Merrick join in. However, David and Merrick aren't as strong as Lestat, and they eventually just kind of pass out from blood loss. But Lestat keeps going until Louis like rouses a little bit, and enough to get to start drinking from him. So a few hours go by, and they're back in the apartment, and David and Merrick are recovering after their blood loss, and Lestat's there, and Louis, he's looking a lot better. He's got skin again rather than just charcoal, so he's still recovering, and he's immediately a lot more powerful. But Lestat's like, listen, this transformation isn't fully complete until like we exchange blood. So, they have to do the whole like turning of Louis again, kind of, because like, yeah, he gave him a lot of blood, but I guess Lestat needs to take it back, and they need to have like a cyclical thing of blood, and then it will fully complete the change in Louis, and like Louis will be on the same level, like power-wise, as Lestat. And for once, I feel like Lestat maybe has had some growth as a character, because he asks Louis for permission, which is more than he's done for a lot of people. He's like, do you want this? And Louis, he's like, yes, actually, I do want that, because you know what? After this whole blood thing, like, I feel a whole lot less depressed, actually. Like, this is exactly what I needed. So, like, he's like, all right, I want to be part of something bigger than me. It makes me less depressed. Let's go. So they do their whole thing, and like, Louis feeling better. And then Merrick needs to like clear the air for a minute, because no one's really addressed the fact that Merrick's a vampire yet. And she's like, hey, guess what? Don't feel guilty about this. Like, I wanted to become a vampire for quite some time, and I've been planning it for years at this point, so like, oh, sorry, I'm a bitch. Like, she's like, listen, it's not your fault. So what had happened was, when David's original body was sent back to the Talamasca for burial, Merrick kind of used her abilities on it, and she was able to surmise that David wasn't in the body when the body died. So she's like, oh, well, he won't mind this. And she cuts off David's hand, and she uses it in like a binding spell that would make David come back to her and like be under her control. So like, yikes. And then she used a similar spell on Louis to make him in love with her and bend him to her will to get to become a vampire, because, that uncle back in the day that was like haunting her, his name was Uncle Vervain, and she was like, guess what? The same uncle that wanted me to go hunting for like treasure mask, well, he was also the one who foretold my future of becoming a vampire. So she like knew this was gonna happen, and she took steps to actively make it happen. And like, Lestat is this tickled by this. He's like, wow, like, that's bold. Like, that's a lot. That's some devious shit, and like, I'm impressed. Like, Lestat is like tickled by Merrick. He's like, you're kind of cool. Like, let's do a blood exchange. Like, I want you to be friends with me. Like, let's do blood exchange. And she's like, okay, yay, we're all gonna be like a happy vampire family. So everybody's sharing blood. Everybody's a stronger vampire. They're all on the stats level. And like, after the whole, like, this whole endeavor, like, Lestat is like, he's finally starting to get back to normal a bit. Probably also because he made friends at the same power level as him. So he's like, okay, I promise I'm not gonna go back into like my catatonic state. I'm gonna stay. We're all gonna be like a big vampire family, and you know, I'm feeling better. Things are looking up for Lestat, and they're like, okay, yay, Lestat's back, and things are looking up. Things are looking good for all of them, and that is until Merrick receives this letter from the Talamasca, and it's kind of addressed to all of them. And the Talamasca's like, hey, guess what? We know what you did to Merrick. We're not okay with it, and if she doesn't like report to headquarters ASAP, we're gonna go after all the vampires. It's vampire hunting season. And Lestat's like, oh, these bitches wanna play? Like, Lestat is ready to start hunting some nerds. Like, he's like not into this. He's like, you don't threaten me. No. But before he can go on his murderous rampage here, like, Merrick and David, they like, please don't kill the Talamasca. Like, please, can you not kill all the Talamasca? Let's find an alternative here. Like, what if we just like burn all the evidence that we were here and we move to a new city for a few years? They'll forget eventually. We're gonna be around for a while. Let's just move for a hot minute. Lestat is like, ugh, fine, we can move. I won't murder them, all right? Stop making a big deal out of it. So they're all gonna leave New Orleans together. They start prepping for that. And the last night there, David, he's leaving a note for the Talamasca at their apartment. And the letter's just like, hey, Talamasca, y'all fucked up big time threatening Lestat. Like, frankly, he wants to kill all of you, and I'm not able to stop him. However, I convinced him for, like, at least the time being not to murder all of you, but for the love of God, y'all need to back the fuck off, because, like, I can't stop him from doing anything. And like, Lestat reads the note, and he finds it all very amusing. And like, frankly, Lestat is so capricious. He's already on to his next adventure already. Like, he's like, oh, I wanted to kill the Talamasca. I've already forgotten about that. Like, whatever, let's go play. Like, he's just like on to the next already. And so like, Lestat, Louis, David, and Merrick, they all leave New Orleans, and they're gonna go off and do vampire adventures together. And that's the end of the book. So yeah, overall, not a ton of stuff really happened in Merrick. It's just kind of like a singular vampire adventure. The biggest thing I think that came out of that is now, the vampire throuple now has a new member in it. So they have like a new vampire little family. Lestat is finally not catatonic anymore. And they're off to a new city to start new adventures. So I wonder how that's gonna like look going forward for them. What are they gonna get into? I don't know. So yeah, overall I wasn't like super into this one. I think it's fine. I don't know, I give it like 3.5 stars. I guess it's fine. I just wanted like, I don't know, I was just expecting a little bit more out of it, especially since I just came out of like Mayfair, which was just like an acid trip of a lot of stuff. And so like this one has so much less stuff in it. So I was like, like that's kind of how I felt about it in the end. It's fine, it's whatever. Anyway, on that note, let me know in the comments down below, what are you excited to see these vampires get into? Like, do you have any ideas what kind of vampire adventures they might get into? Like, I don't know, I haven't read the rest of the series yet, but I am excited to learn. Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like, and if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And if you want cool exclusive content, including early access to videos and a book club, you can consider becoming a channel member or a patron. Links for that are in the description down below. And on that note, I will see you guys soon. Goodbye.